Welcome to Idaho Fish and Game's Hook and Bulletin podcast, your weekly news roundup of hunting, fishing, trapping, and conservation stories from around the Gem State. Hosted by Fish and Game's Public Information Specialist, Connor J. Lease.
And welcome back, everyone, to Idaho Fish and Game's Hook and Bulletin podcast. It's been a very busy week for hunting, fishing, trapping, and conservation stories here in Idaho. Lots of new information to talk about on this episode. This week on the Hook and Bulletin, we'll be diving into a recent CWD case coming out of the Panhandle, new requirements for bear baiting, plus a mandatory bear identification course for hunters, and some great news for Idaho's Sockeye salmon. But first, we got to cover some CWD news.
The CWD Report.
The Idaho Panhandle has been abuzz these past 2 weeks as chronic wasting disease has sprung up in yet another corner of the Pacific Northwest. Earlier this month, Idaho Fish and Game received test results confirming a positive case of CWD in an adult female white-tailed deer roughly 3 miles outside of Bonners Ferry in Unit 1. The deer was reported to Fish and Game by a landowner who found the dead deer in early July. This recent case marks the first positive CWD detection in North Idaho. Fish and Game has been working quickly and diligently to put together a plan on how to move forward in the midst of this disappointing news. During last week's conference call, the Fish and Game Commission was briefed and approved a 9-day CWD surveillance hunt beginning August 24th with the goal of collecting additional samples to better understand disease prevalence and distribution. Now, there's a lot we are trying to understand in regards to this latest detection, but we're not going to be doing it alone. Staff up in the Panhandle region have already been working together with local sportsmen who share similar concerns for CWD and the potential impacts it can have on a region's deer and elk populations. Here's Panhandle Regional Supervisor Carson Watkins with more.
We hear a lot of confusion about what a surveillance hunt is, and we'd like to try and clear some of that up. The purpose of a surveillance hunt is simply to gather additional CWD samples so we can learn more about the prevalence and distribution of CWD in the area, in this case around Bonners Ferry. Contrary to rumors, the surveillance hunt is not intended to reduce or wipe out the local deer population. Information gathered from a surveillance hunt establishes a critical baseline to help us gauge the current and future status of the disease in the area.
Fish and Game will be offering 300 white-tailed deer tags for the CWD surveillance hunt that'll run from August 24th through September 1st in a small portion of Unit 1. There is a map of the hunt perimeter on our website, and links will be included in the description. Now, before I jump into how this surveillance hunt is going to work, I do want to point out that by the time this podcast airs, or shortly thereafter, the evening of Thursday, August 22nd, the tag sale will already be underway in Bonners Ferry. Due to the nature of this podcast reporting on the previous week's stories, it's difficult sometimes to forecast upcoming events. So my apologies if you're just now catching wind of this recent information. All right, so the surveillance hunt. As mentioned earlier, there will be 300 tags available with the goal of collecting 200 CWD test samples from the area. The 200 samples represent just 0.4% of Unit 1's estimated total white-tailed deer population, which is roughly 56,000. Remember, the sole purpose of this special hunt is for wildlife officials to get a better understanding of how prevalent CWD is in that given location. With most panhandle deer hunts occurring in late fall, why is now the opportune time to hold a special surveillance hunt, albeit 9 days long? Well, since September of 2023, we've received 163 voluntary CWD tests from animals taken in Unit 1, which is roughly the size of Delaware. Since 2019, sampling in the unit has ranged between 145 and 214 samples each year. Unit 1 also supports high densities of white-tailed deer, as mentioned earlier. Rather than sit around and wait, Fish and Game staff are hoping to get a better idea of CWD prevalence and distribution in the vicinity of Bonners Ferry so the department and the commission can determine if they need to alter upcoming general season hunts and/or CWD testing requirements. Folks, this is a big story. But you know what? We're in this together, and we appreciate your patience and trust as we navigate this new challenge. And when I say we, I mean even outside of Idaho. Jump back to elementary school geography class, and you'll quickly see that Unit 1 is surrounded on 3 sides by Washington, British Columbia, and Montana, all of which have detected CWD, including relatively new detections in those first 2. Washington's first case of CWD was confirmed earlier in August in an adult female white-tailed deer that was found dead north of Spokane. British Columbia reported its first detection of CWD in February of 2024 in 2 deer roughly 50 miles from the Idaho border. And in recent years, Montana has detected numerous CWD positives in the Libby area near Idaho's border. As we move forward, if you happen to see a sickly or road-killed deer, elk, or moose in the US 95 corridor in that Bonners Ferry area, as well as along Highway 2 from Bonners Ferry to the Montana state line, please report it. Right now, their phone lines are going crazier than a PBS telethon, but the Panhandle Regional Office wants to know about these incidents, and they want to help provide you with information. So give them a call at 208-769-1414 to report animals that appear sick, or if you have any other general questions regarding the story. And it's worth repeating, chronic wasting disease is a contagious, fatal neurological disease that affects deer, elk, and moose. There isn't a cure for CWD, no approved live test for wild animals, and no vaccine. Once again, thanks so much for your patience and understanding, folks. For more information on CWD in Idaho, head on over to our official CWD webpage. Link can be found in the description. Okay, next up, another story coming out of last week's commission call that concerns Idaho bear hunters. The Idaho Fish and Game Commission recently approved temporary rules for black bear hunting in Idaho that include new requirements for bear baiting and a mandatory bear identification course for hunters. We'll start with the first one. Starting September 1st, any person placing bait to hunt black bears, hunting at a bait site, or witnessing the use of a bait site by a grizzly bear must immediately report the presence of a grizzly bear at a bait station to a Fish and Game regional office. Hunters must then stop hunting over that bait site for the remainder of that specific hunting season. The bait site may not be rebaited and must be removed as soon as it's safe and feasible. For example, if a grizzly visits a bait site during spring season, the bait site must be removed for the remainder of the spring season, but could be replaced for fall season. All right, number 2. Starting in January 1st, 2025, anyone hunting black bears in Idaho must show proof of taking a bear identification test to help them differentiate between black bears and grizzly bears. Details on how hunters can take a test and show proof will be provided before the new rule takes effect. Now, these are temporary rules that will still go through a formal rulemaking process and include public comment. So keep your ear to the ground if you'd like to weigh in on this topic. Idaho is seeking removal of grizzlies from Federal Endangered Species Act protection, and part of the delisting process reviews state regulatory measures, rules to protect grizzlies if federal protection is lifted. For decades, the Idaho Fish and Game Commission has prohibited black bear hunters from using bait in occupied grizzly bear recovery areas in the Panhandle and Greater Yellowstone area. Now, by having these additional rules in place, Idaho's case for delisting is even stronger. There is no hunting season for grizzlies in Idaho, and grizzly bear deaths from hunter misidentification are a rare occurrence and has not prevented the remarkable growth and expansion of Idaho's grizzly bear population. For more information, check out Roger Phillips' story on our website. Next up, here's another story from the desk of Roger Phillips, this time highlighting some much anticipated good news for Idaho's sockeye salmon. This year's sockeye return hit a record number, which is good news, but with an asterisk. Through August 19th, 2,835 fish were counted at Lower Granite Dam, about 30 miles downstream from Lewiston. Most of those fish probably won't return to Idaho. That's the highest sockeye return since fish counting started at the dam in 1975, topping the previous record of 2,786 fish back in 2014. About 750,000 sockeye crossed Bonneville Dam on the Columbia River this summer, and nearly all were bound for the upper Columbia. Large sockeye returns typically mean more strays, and Fish and Game's senior fisheries research biologist Eric Johnson noted even 0.5% straying into the Snake River could result in 3,000 to 4,000 fish crossing Lower Granite Dam. Fish and Game sockeye managers have never seen a Columbia River stray make it all the way to the Sawtooth Basin. Sockeye typically start arriving to the Stanley area around the third week of July. They were on cue this year, with the first fish being trapped on July 23rd. Sockeye will continue returning into October, but most are expected to arrive during August and September. Based on tags implemented in some of Idaho's sockeye, Johnson said 970 of the sockeye that crossed Lower Granite are likely heading to the Sawtooth Basin near Stanley, which is about 400 miles from Lower Granite Dam. Now, it's just a waiting game to see how many Idaho sockeye arrive. Through August 19th, 33 sockeye had arrived to the Stanley area. Earlier this summer, Fish and Game staff also trapped and transported 255 sockeye from Lower Granite to the Eagle Fish Hatchery near Boise, when the summer heat wave was warming river temperatures to levels that are dangerous for sockeye. Fish and Game captures sockeye in traps at Redfish Lake Creek and in the Upper Salmon River upstream from the confluence of Redfish Lake Creek. If you want to see a pretty cool video of what that looks like, head on over to our YouTube channel and search Sockeye Roundup. I'll include a link for both the video and this latest story in the description below. All right, if you've been planning a camping trip up into the Horsethief Reservoir area, you're going to want to tune in to this next story. Last week in episode 21, we highlighted Fish and Game's Hunt Planner map and explained how it comes in handy when looking for fire information. Well, fires, it turns out, are back in the news, this time up at Horsethief Reservoir. At the request of fire operations personnel, Idaho Fish and Game has closed the Horsethief Reservoir campgrounds as firefighters work to protect the area from the Snag Fire. Camping and day use will remain closed until further notice. At the time of this recording, the Snag Fire is clocking in at just over 22,000 acres and is roughly 1% contained. Additionally, fire crews are asking people to avoid the area in general while firefighting efforts are active, for the safety of firefighting personnel and the public. With several fires actively burning around the southwest region and fall hunting seasons fast approaching, Fish and Game reminds hunters heading into the backcountry to check with Forest Service Ranger District offices or county sheriff's offices for fire closures in their hunt areas. And check frequently. Fire conditions and associated road and area closures can change rapidly. Hunters can find general information online using the Incident Information System, or INCIWEB, at inciweb.wildfire.gov. That's inciweb.wildfire.gov. And with that, it's time for the Rapid Fire Bulletin. The second wave of Idaho Super Hunt drawing winners have been selected. Of the 49,125 total entries, 13,737 were for 2 deer tags, 15,064 were for 2 elk tags, 3,540 were for 2 pronghorn tags, 12,208 were for 1 moose tag, and 4,576 entries were for 1 Super Hunt combo, which includes a tag for each of the 4 species. All winners have been contacted. State law prohibits Fish and Game from releasing the names of the winners. For more information, including frequently asked questions and stories and photos of previous winners, visit the Super Hunt page on Fish and Game's website. Fish and Game is encouraging folks in and around the Clearwater area to be on the lookout for white-tailed deer exhibiting symptoms of EHD. Please report dead or sick deer online at the Wildlife Health webpage or contact the Clearwater region at 208-799-5010. Outbreaks of EHD or epizootic hemorrhagic disease are not uncommon to white-tailed deer in the Clearwater region. This summer's hot and dry weather pattern presents ideal conditions for deer to congregate at water sources where the disease-carrying biting gnat resides. Idaho Fish and Game wants to hear from hunters regarding how non-resident deer and elk tags are issued. The purpose of the non-resident tag issuance advisory group is to review current processes for how Fish and Game issues general season deer and elk tags to non-residents, and to develop recommendations to the Commission on potential changes and improvements. The advisory group will review options, including using a draw system and enhancing the current over-the-counter system. The group will host its next meeting on August 28th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at Fish and Game headquarters in Boise. Public seating will be limited, however, the meeting will be streamed virtually on Zoom. For more information, hit the link in the description. After consultation with the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, Fish and Game relocated an adult male grizzly back on August 13th. Wildlife Services set a trap for the animal after the death of a domestic calf near Highway 20 and the Buffalo River that was determined to have been killed by a grizzly bear. An 11-year-old male grizzly was captured that evening as it returned to the kill site. The bear was identified as a known individual that had previously been collared for research purposes and had no known history of conflict prior to this incident. In cooperation with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Caribou-Targhee National Forest, the grizzly bear was immobilized, given a body condition and health assessment, fitted with a radio collar, and then relocated to a remote area in the Fish Creek drainage on Forest Service land approximately 12 miles from the city of Island Park. And last but not least, an instructor-led hunter and bow hunter combination course is scheduled August 26th through August 30th from 5 to 9 p.m. each evening in Salmon. This course will certify students in both hunter and bow hunter education and is designed for youth 9 years of age or anyone new to hunting. Space is limited and advanced registration is required by registering online or by visiting any Fish and Game office. For more information, contact the Salmon Regional Office at 208-756-2271. Okay, that's it for this week's stories. It's time for our question of the week. I think this is going to be a timely one. Folks up in our Panhandle region have already been getting this question a lot. For those who have expressed interest in the previously mentioned CWD surveillance hunt, or for those who plan on getting a tag right around the time this podcast airs, the question is, quote, will the new CWD surveillance hunt tags for the Bonners Ferry area take the place of my general deer tag? The answer to that is no. These tags are going to be considered, quote-unquote, extra tags, so they will not affect a hunter's ability to participate in other deer hunts. Hope this helps. And that's all the news we have for this week. Thanks for putting an ear to Idaho Fish and Game's Hook and Bulletin. If there's something on your mind or if you got a question related to Fish and Game matters, feel free to drop us a line at podcast@idfg.idaho.gov. Again, that's podcast@idfg.idaho.gov. Thanks for listening, folks. We'll catch you next week.